Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 73 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on, brother?
What's happening, man?
Not much, man. I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm doing good too. I'm recovering, man.
You said all right, and then you switched it to good.
I am good. I'm always good. I'm Gibby good, man. But
Gibby good.
Gibby good. But yeah, I'm recovering. Had a good follow-up visit.
Mm-hmm. Still milking it, I see.
Nah, yeah, she gave me positive feedback, man.
That's good.
She reached in and said, felt around and said, "You're good, man.
You keep saying reached in.
You're recovering the way you should be. A couple more weeks, and you can be back to normal."
The visual of a doctor reaching in is not something that is appealing to me. Now, I've got that visual stuck in my head, so thank you very much. But I am glad you're doing well.
I am. Thank you.
So this episode is going to release on Father's Day. So we want to wish all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day.
Yep. Happy Father's Day to all you guys. And if you're one of those moms pulling double duties, happy Father's Day /
You get them both.
Yeah. You get both days.
You get a present on Mother's Day and Father's Day.
There's some that pull double duty, man.
There are. Amazing. So we have some new Patreon supporters. Let's do some shout outs. We had Leslie Chappell, Autumn Lacasio, Ad Girl, Mika, Heather Holstein.
Like Holstein? Yeah.
Yeah. Like exactly what I just said.
Yeah. Just like that.
You said like Holstein?
I don't know.
No, not like Holstein. It really is Holstein.
Yeah, it's the real thing. Real deal.
Thing. Melissa Falkenberry.
Oh, the old Falkenberry.
The old Falkenberry.
Give me some of that Falkenberry. That's wrong.
That doesn't sound good.
All right, next name.
Cassie Reen Kent.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie.
Chantel Wilson.
Yeah.
Amy Bill.
Thanks, Amy Bill.
Amber Way.
Amber. I'm not going to mess this one up now. It's not a song. It's just Amber Way.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Timber Dilts. You got nothing for that?
I was going to I got my Timberlands on, but, I don't, and it doesn't really go with timber, so I was just going to let it go.
Now, if you'd went Kesha and said,
yeah,
I'm shouting timber, is that how it goes?
I don't know. I don't follow
It's
Kesha.
an older song, but
I know you're a big fan, so.
Yeah, you know me. Kathleen Knoble.
Knoble?
I'm on the fence on this one, Gibbs.
Yeah.
I don't know if after the Knik River incident,
is it a hard K or a soft K?
Or is it silent? I don't know.
Knock or
Canuck. It's either Knoble or Noble. So I apologize, but I went with Knoble.
Yeah.
John Porridge.
Porridge, the big bear?
No, Porridge.
Oh, Porridge.
CH.
Yeah.
Not Porridge.
Yeah.
Porridge.
You say it your way, I say it mine.
I probably said it wrong anyway.
You probably did.
I'm correcting you, but I'm probably wrong anyway.
Well, we'll see.
We had Leah.
Just Leah.
Jenna Pantano.
Patano.
You left out one of the ends entirely. The first one.
Pantano.
There you go. Christy Zalea.
Zalea.
Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica.
Aaron Follett.
Yeah.
Ellen Wright.
Hey, Ellen.
Wendy Kugel. Jeffrey Bielecki.
Bielecki?
Mm-hmm.
He'd be lucky to be Bielecki.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Jess Huey. Jess has been an unbelievable supporter of TCAT Unsolved.
She's just awesome, man.
Not only on Patreon, but social media. She's an amazing pottery maker. What's the word for that?
Man. She's whatever you call that. Pottery person.
Yeah.
She's amazing at that.
Has still not sent our mugs, though, that she said she was going to.
Because she's perfectionist. She's waiting until they get to that perfect. She's aging them.
Is she?
Yeah.
You act like you know
pottery.
Anything about how
I
pottery?
Don't, yeah.
What do you make pottery in?
A kiln.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's also got the green thumb. What do you call those people?
Oh yeah, she's very into horticulture.
Yeah, big time.
Plants.
Yeah, and she can make those.
What do you call them?
Yeah, stuff that you spray on yourself, natural though. Like oils from plants and flowers to repel insects or to, you know,
The stuff that you spray on yourself.
repellent, but natural, organic, and
Right. She is into like organic things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
nature. And
she's a big
she's
water
a
buff too.
naturalist.
Big water buff.
Yeah. So we appreciate Jess, and we appreciate all the new Patreon support. We had a lot of PayPal support too, Gibbs.
Ooh, I like PayPal support too.
Cindy DeFrancisco Johns,
DeFrancisco Johns. I got it that time.
Jessica Burnson, Shauna Murray, and May Darrup.
May, I like that. I don't hear that name very often.
May. That's a cool name.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hey, May.
So love all the support. It helps us keep doing what we're doing. Much, much appreciated. Now, at this same time this episode's out, we have a new episode of True Crime All the Time. We're talking about the murder of Christopher Newsom and Shannon Christian. This is in Knoxville. This is a case, Gibbs, that people have requested that we do essentially since we started the podcast. It's a very horrific murder.
It's terrible.
2 murders,
Yeah,
I should
brutal.
say. But the circumstances around the murders and the suspects and the subsequent trials all add up to make it a very fascinating look at why did these people do this? What was their reasoning behind it? Now we have to give a big shout out to Lindsay Skolaric for her writing and research on this episode.
She did a great job.
Great job. She's been helping us out tremendously. All right, Gibbs, are you ready to get into this episode of Unsolved?
I am ready.
We are talking about Kathleen Peterson. This is a very famous case, made famous by the documentary The Staircase, which Netflix has just re-released and then added some additional episodes onto the original, and it's caused a lot of renewed interest in the case. And Gibbs, you and I went back and forth. We debated this. Should we do this on True Crime All the Time? Should we do it on Unsolved? We finally settled on we're going to do it on Unsolved. Even though technically in the record books this case is solved, we want to tell the story, and we decided to put it out on Unsolved.
Yeah.
Like it or not.
What we do.
We're not saying the case is unsolved, but there are a lot of mysteries that surround this case. And I think it lends itself well to the type of cases that we do on Unsolved, even though technically it's solved. And we'll get into all of that. But let's first talk a little bit about Kathleen Peterson. She was born Kathleen Hunt.
Yes.
On February 21st, 1953 in Greensboro, North Carolina. By the time she got to high school, she was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania with her family. She graduated, Gibbs, first in her class from high school in Lancaster, PA.
So something in common.
Something in common with you,
Yeah.
sure. It's an amazing feat. Now, I'm assuming her class had more than 10 people in it, but either way.
I was just saying I graduated with my class. She graduated with her class.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't going to go like she was number 1 and I was number whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
161 out of 164. I think we talked about it.
I don't want to throw numbers out. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not going to brag.
You're not going to brag about your placement scores or anything like that.
No.
But it is an amazing feat. I don't care what high school you go to be number 1, to beat out everyone else, it means something. It means you put in a lot of hard work. Probably means you were naturally gifted, intelligent to begin with.
Are we talking about me? Still?
Somewhat.
Okay.
But mostly about Kathleen Hunt at this time. She then goes on to attend Duke University. And you don't get into Duke University without being intelligent, without having the scores.
Or being a really good basketball player?
Or being a really good basketball player. Or lacrosse. I think they're really good at lacrosse too. But even their basketball players, as much as I dislike Duke, being a Kentucky fan, they have some very intelligent basketball players.
They really do.
I think an intelligent guy that is very good at basketball, and this would go for women too, I think they would gravitate toward Duke because they know if they don't make it in basketball, they don't make it to the next level, they're going to walk away with a world-class education.
That's true.
Paid for in exchange of them, competing in athletics. It's a very smart move to make. I'm not saying going to other schools is not smart, but having a Duke University education, it means something.
Carry some weight.
It does.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about it. And Kathleen was the first female student accepted into the School of Engineering. So
That's
again,
impressive.
It is. That's what we're trying to get across. She was very impressive. She graduated Duke in 1975 with a BS in civil engineering and a master's in mechanical engineering. So very intelligent. She had to have had a very good work ethic to get all of this stuff done. She later served on the board of Durham Arts Council and was the director of information services at Nortel Networks.
Which is a big company at the time.
It was. I don't know if that Nortel, I don't think is still around, right? I think it's been gobbled up probably. It was like a telecommunications, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If I'm thinking
that
correctly.
was the tail part on the back of the.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nortel.
Yeah.
That's good.
There's my, not trying to show off my numbers from school.
Now you're showing off your linguistic skills and keeping me in check. I appreciate it. She also gave her time to the American Dance Festival, the Caroline Ballet. So we're trying to paint a picture of this woman as extremely accomplished, but also as a person that was willing to give her time for causes, which I think says something about a person. Now, Kathleen was married prior to her marriage to Michael Peterson. She had one daughter with her first husband, Fred Atwater. That marriage ended in divorce in 1985. So then we talk a little bit about Michael Peterson. He was born October 23rd, 1943 in Nashville, Tennessee. So he was about 10 years or so older than Kathleen.
Yeah.
He also graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's degree in political science. He was the president of the Sigma Nu fraternity, editor of the Daily Student newspaper. So make no mistake about it, Michael Peterson is an intelligent person in his own right. After graduating from Duke, he took a civilian job with the Department of Defense, where he was assigned to research arguments supporting increased military involvement in Vietnam. Now, like Kathleen, Michael also had a previous marriage. In 1965, he married a woman named Patricia, who was a teacher at an elementary school on an air base in West Germany. They would have two children together, Clayton and Todd. And then in 1968, Michael Peterson enlisted in the Marines and served in Vietnam, but was released with an honorable discharge 3 years later after being disabled in a car accident. Michael and Patricia were living in Germany when they befriended another couple, Elizabeth and George Ratliff. George Ratliff would die in 1983. And after George's death, Michael and Patricia became even closer to Elizabeth. But Elizabeth would die in 1985. On November 25th of that year, a nanny found Elizabeth Ratliff at or near the bottom of the stairs at her house. And it was reported, Gibbs, that Michael Peterson had walked Elizabeth home the night before from a dinner that they had at his house, his and Patricia's house. After Elizabeth's death in 1985, her two children, she had two girls, Martha and Margaret, were adopted by Michael and Patricia Peterson. So this is how good of friends they were. Michael and Patricia stepped in to take care of George and Elizabeth's children after they both died.
Yeah, and they considered him their dad to this day.
But it was just a couple of years after Elizabeth's death, in 1987, Patricia and Michael divorced. And so the two children that they had together went with Patricia. So that would be Clayton and Todd. But Martha and Margaret, they went with Michael Peterson, and he moved along with them to Durham, North Carolina. And later on, eventually, his other two kids, his biological kids, they're going to move to North Carolina to be with him as well. Now, Michael Peterson became a writer. He wrote 3 novels based on his experiences in Vietnam: The Immortal Dragon, A Time of War, and A Bitter Peace. He also co-wrote the biographical Charlie Two Shoes and the Marines of Love Company with a journalist by the name of David Perlmutt. On top of that, he co-wrote another book called Operation Broken Reed with Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Boyd. And besides writing novels, he was also a newspaper columnist for the Durham Herald-Sun, and he became known, Gibbs, as a journalist that was often very critical of the police in Durham County, as well as the district attorney at the time, James Hardin Jr. Michael Peterson would meet Kathleen Hunt. They would start a relationship, and in 1989, they moved in together. But they wouldn't marry until much later, 1997. Kathleen's daughter from her first marriage would also join this extended family. So it was a pretty good-sized family between Michael's 2 biological kids, the 2 girls that he adopted, and Kathleen's daughter.
It's a lot of kids, man.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, and they would live in a 14-room mansion in Forest Hills area of the Durham, North Carolina. So nice area, very nice area.
Yeah, it was a really nice house. It was a like you said, Gibbs, a mansion. But they had some money. I mean, Kathleen was making very good money at her job, and Michael Peterson was making money from his book sales. He was a writer, but I don't think he made anywhere near what she made. But there was something I read that said the tax bill on that house alone was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $15,000.
Quite a bit.
Sizable tax bill back then.
Back then, sure.
Now we jump forward in time to December 9th, 2001. Michael and Kathleen watched a movie together called America's Sweethearts.
Yeah, I think that's like the movie with John Cusack and Julia Roberts. I think Michael Douglas's wife.
Did you start to say Catherine Zeta-Jones and figure out that I need to switch to Michael Douglas's wife?
Michael Douglas's wife.
Because it's easier to say.
They're a great looking couple, too.
I don't remember that movie at all. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Something like Cusack falls in love with Roberts because she's like really sweet and nice, and his wife, which is a sister to Roberts, is kind of mean and always thinking about herself, if I remember right. I don't know.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm not adding it to my watch list.
Yeah.
But that's the movie they watched that night.
Okay.
They enjoyed a bottle of wine by the pool afterwards. And then Kathleen went to bed. Michael was still up. And the next thing that happens is Michael Peterson is calling 911.
Tom 911, where's your emergency?
1810 Cedar Street, please.
What's wrong?
My wife's had an accident. She's still breathing.
What kind of accident?
Down on the stairs. She's still breathing. Please
Is
come.
she conscious?
What?
Is she conscious?
No, she's not conscious.
Okay,
Please.
how many stairs did you
What?
fall down?
Huh?
How many stairs?
Stairs.
How many stairs? Calm down, sir. Calm down.
No, 15, 20, I don't know. Please, get somebody here right away, please.
Okay, somebody's dispatching the ambulance while I ask you questions.
It's in Forest Hills, okay? Please.
So pretty short clip of the 911 call, but it gets to the heart of the matter, which is Michael Peterson saying that he discovered his wife unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. And he's assuming at that point that she had fallen down. What he said in his words, Gibbs, were probably 15 or 20 steps.
Steps.
Now, Michael would later claim that he was out by the pool. He had come into the house around 2:40 a.m., and that's when he found Kathleen. Now, he would also go on to say that one of the reasons why he immediately thought she fell down the stairs was that she had consumed alcohol and that she had also been taking Valium. And I know, Gibbs, from witnessing it in others firsthand, those types of combinations don't always work out very well. Alcohol and some types of prescription drugs, they can do a number on some people.
Most people, I would think.
Yeah, they don't seem to affect me a whole lot, but yeah, most people.
That you know of.
That I know of.
Frank the Tank.
My wife tells me the next day after I do the things that I do. All right, Gibbs, let's take a quick break to talk about a new sponsor for us, Madison Reed. Madison Reed is a company that is revolutionizing the way that women color their hair. They offer the quality of salon color, the convenience and affordability of at-home hair color, and they use an ammonia-free formula with ingredients that you're going to feel really good about. And this is something that my wife has used, my mother-in-law has used. They both have raved about Madison Reed. So this is not something that you and I can test out, Gibbs. It's not made for us. I don't have enough hair to use it anyway, so we had to get some other people to try it out. But I heard nothing but great things. They raved about how easy it was and the final look, not to mention the price. So you too can experience beautiful, multi-dimensional hair color. It's made in Italy, delivered right to your door on your schedule for under $25. Join the hundreds of thousands of women who have tried and loved Madison Reed. And you can go to madison-reed.com to find your perfect shade of hair color. So for our listeners, Madison Reed is offering 10% off plus free shipping on your first color kit. Go to madison-reed.com. Use the promo code UNSOLVED. That's madison-reed.com, promo code UNSOLVED. The toxicology reports on Kathleen are going to come back saying that her blood alcohol content was 0.07. The autopsy report concluded that Kathleen had suffered a number of injuries. She had a fracture to her neck, 7 lacerations to the top and back of her head that were thought to be consistent with blows from a blunt object. Now, the cause of death was ruled as loss of blood, and it was determined that it would have taken somewhere between 90 minutes to 2 hours for Kathleen to lose the amount of blood necessary to cause her death after sustaining the injury she did. So we have the medical examiner stating that Kathleen bled out from the lacerations she sustained to her scalp, but they go on to classify this as a homicidal assault. So Gibbs, they are not looking at her injuries and saying this was most likely caused by a fall down the stairs. That's not what they're saying.
That's exactly what they're saying.
So obviously, Gibbs, the police are talking with Michael Peterson. He's telling them his story, or, what he says happened. But things start to move pretty quickly. After this thing is ruled a homicide, he hires an attorney. Not very long after Kathleen is buried on December 13th, and then it's about December 20th when he's charged with her murder. So he's arrested in late December and spends almost a month in jail until he's able to get a bond in the amount of $850,000, and then he finally gets out. Now, this trial is not going to start until 2003. So he's out during this time. So the prosecution is going into this trial, Gibbs, with the angle that this was not a fall down the stairs. Kathleen Peterson did not have an accident. Right? They're looking at the autopsy results and saying this was caused by some blows to the head delivered by some type of object. And one of the theories that they offer up at trial is that the object used by Michael Peterson to inflict these wounds on Kathleen was a blow poke. And this was a blow poke that was given to Michael and Kathleen by Kathleen's sister.
Yes.
And apparently she gave it out as a gift to multiple members in her family.
Yeah, she was really impressed by this blow poke that she thought, what a great gift. So I think she gave out 4 or 5 out. And, of course, Kathleen and Michael were one of the recipients of one. And she was able to get hers and a few other people's and sent it to the prosecutor so that they could look at it and run some testing to determine if that could have been a weapon that was used that matched some of the damage that they found in the autopsy.
Well, one of the things was it was said that this was never recovered from the house, right? They know the blow poke was at the house, but they never found it. Now, obviously, the defense would put up an argument, and part of their argument was that Kathleen's skull had not been fractured. She had not suffered any brain damage, and that was inconsistent with injuries that someone would receive in a beating death, especially using an instrument like this blow poke. They hired a forensic expert, the defense did, that testified that the blood spatter evidence was consistent with an accidental fall down the stairs, but the prosecution had their own experts and their own investigators who said the exact opposite, right? The blood spatter was not consistent with the fall down the stairs. And we haven't talked about it really, but Michael Peterson had money and he put together a defense team using that money, right? He had a high profile attorney. He had high profile forensic experts. I mean, he had Dr. Henry Lee on his team. He had Dr. Werner Spitz, I think is his name. These were guys that were kind of giants in their field. They had testified in a lot of high-profile cases. Defense experts concluded that what most likely happened was that Kathleen slipped about 4 or 5 steps away from the bottom, hit her head initially on a wall, then once more on the opposite wall before falling unconscious. Then they went on to theorize that at some point she woke up, she tried to get to her feet, but she kept slipping in the pooled blood. And this is what they used to explain the blood on the bottom of her feet, and that she just kept slipping and continually hitting her head. And this is how they were explaining this large number of lacerations. This trial became a media sensation. Prosecutors began attacking Michael Peterson's personal life in an attempt to portray him in a bad light. They started exposing things that had happened in the past. They started exposing things that he was doing currently.
Well, they were going after his character.
They were. One of the things that they exposed was his military record. Now, he did serve in the military, but he had told a number of people that he had been given a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and 2 Purple Hearts. So he's claiming some pretty serious hardware here. And he had these medals, but he didn't have any of the paperwork to back up or corroborate the fact that they were awarded to him. And Michael Peterson had been forced to admit years ago, before Kathleen even died, Gibbs, when he ran for office for mayor in 1999, that he never earned Purple Heart, because his story was that he got it from injuries that he sustained from an exploding grenade. But the true fact is he was injured in an auto accident in Japan, right? We talked about that. That's why he was given the honorable discharge. So the prosecution used this against him at trial. And then the prosecution started to tell the jury about Michael Peterson's sex life. This resulted from some things that investigators found on his home computer. It was homosexual pornography. They also found emails that contained sexually explicit conversations with men that he was having sex with or had had sex with in the past. So the prosecution's theory was that Kathleen found out about Michael's other life. She was not happy about this, and that this was the motive for him killing her.
Yeah, I can't imagine too many wives being happy that you've with your spouse for such a long time, and then you find out that, you know, he's bisexual and, you know, sleeping with different men, prostitutes, things like that for money. And then you see some of the emails, and they're pretty graphic. I mean, some of the emails are really graphic on what he was going to do with this person. And I would just think if you saw that, it would be disturbing. I mean, I couldn't imagine coming across something like that and seeing that your spouse was wanting to have all these sexual encounters with all these different ways of doing it with somebody else. It would just be really, I don't think you'd be like, oh, well, that's okay. You enjoy that. We still got dinner.
No, I agree. Most people wouldn't. But now Michael would contend that Kathleen knew all about it, knew about his bisexuality.
Sure.
Knew that he was having what he referred to as sex-only affairs with men outside of their relationship. And he talks about this, right? He talks about the fact that, yes, he had sex with men, but that he still loved Kathleen. He still had this great relationship with her.
Yeah, I guess some women would be okay with their husband having sex with another guy just for that only, and no emotional affair, just raw sex.
And that's the way he talks about it, right? He talks about the fact that he and Kathleen had the emotional relationship, and they had a sexual relationship too, but that the affairs were just sex.
Yeah.
But sex only.
But if you talk to people that knew Kathleen really well, they would say she would never be okay with that. She would never say, oh, that's fine. You go do your thing, and we still have what we've got. So,
well, and to your point, how many women would be on board with that? Not many from my experience.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, there's going to be some.
There are some, right?
There's always the exception to the standard or the rule or whatever. But
Michael said that he and Kathleen had come to an understanding, an agreement about these extramarital relationships. But like you said, there were people in Kathleen's life, her daughter, Caitlin, her sister, Candace, who said, no way would she, number one, have been okay with that, and number two, that she had ever said anything to them about it. And then the prosecution brings in evidence from Elizabeth Ratliff's death. And we talked about Elizabeth. She died in 1985. Just like Kathleen, Michael Peterson was the last person to see her alive. And like Kathleen, she had been found dead at the bottom of some stairs. Now, back in 1985, her death had been ruled an accident. I think they actually said she might have had a stroke, Gibbs, if I remember correctly. But the prosecution received permission from Elizabeth's two daughters to exhume her body and do another autopsy. And this autopsy revealed that there was evidence that this was most likely a homicide. Now, what's interesting is that the two daughters were doing this for Michael. They were doing it because they thought it would help clear him. And I think, Gibbs, it just kind of muddied the waters. I don't know that it helped him, that's for sure. Now, they didn't come right out, the prosecution, and say that he killed her. But what they did do is introduce her death to the jury. The facts were kind of eerily similar, and they proposed that this possibly gave Michael the idea for how to kill Kathleen. Now, apparently the original police report stated that there was very little blood at the scene, But they got the nanny who found Elizabeth's body. They had her come over. She took the stand in the trial, and she testified that, no, there was actually a lot of blood. So the trial goes on back and forth. But late in the trial, the defense produced the missing blowpoke, right? The one that the prosecution said had never been found at the house. And they said it was at the house. It was found in the garage, and that police investigators must have overlooked it. They did some forensic testing on it that revealed that it couldn't have been used in the murder. But ultimately, Gibbs, I'm not sure that this was that big a deal, because a juror would come out later after the fact, after the trial, and state that the entire jury had already, even before this was revealed, dismissed the idea that the blowpoke was the murder weapon. The trial wrapped up October 10th, 2003, and it made the trial one of the longest in North Carolina history.
And it cost a lot of money. It cost him a lot of money.
Cost him a lot of money. It cost the taxpayers a lot of money.
I mean, he had about $1 million into his defense up to this point, you know. So,
and it didn't work.
It didn't work. So you can imagine what the average Joe would have happened.
Right. It didn't work because the jury found Michael Peterson guilty of murdering his wife, and he was sentenced to life without parole. And I think everybody that was in his camp was in shock. You know, his lawyer, his children, his adopted children, Elizabeth's children, everybody was in shock at the verdict. They were all convinced that he did not do this.
Yeah, and they thought the worst would happen would be a hung jury. That's what they thought worst case would have happened.
Which would mean he'd have to go through it again, possibly,
yeah,
if they wanted to try him again.
They never dreamed that he would have been found guilty. Though I would say that I saw an interview with him prior to the verdict. He's talking with his brother, which happens to be an attorney, and they talk about prepping. And you know, he was, if I'm found guilty, I'm ready. He felt like he was in a good spot for it, which I thought was really weird.
That is strange.
That you're like, if that's the outcome, that's what it is. It's life. We move forward. I got everything ready. The kids can take over the financials, and I'll do what I need to do. I just want to make sure that my kids are removed from all this, and they never have to go through or hear about this again. That's
so strange to me. And this is just me talking, but if you're innocent, if I'm innocent, I am literally scratching and clawing. You know, I'm not saying he didn't do everything he could do, but I sure as hell am not going to sit there and say, you know what, if it happens, I'm okay with it. No way would I ever say that, because I would never be okay with it.
And it was that calm. You know, it was very calm and I thought that was kind of strange.
Now, one thing we have to talk about, and this actually happened prior to the trial, happened on October of 2002. Caitlin Atwater, who is Kathleen Peterson's daughter from her first marriage, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Michael Peterson. And the reason why we're bringing it up now, Gibbs, because it was filed before the trial, but it was in June of 2006 that Michael Peterson filed for bankruptcy, and the wrongful death suit had not been settled. She filed an objection to the bankruptcy, and it wouldn't be until February 1st of 2007 that the wrongful death suit would be settled for $25 million. So Michael Peterson's in jail at this point, but he settles the lawsuit. Now, I don't know where in the heck she's going to get this $25 million. And in the settlement, Michael Peterson does not admit to killing Kathleen, but he settled the lawsuit. And like we said, it's very unlikely that she's going to see much, if any, of this $25 million.
Yeah, probably won't see any of it.
Now, in 2006, Michael and his attorneys filed a motion for their first appeal. And the appeal was argued before the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And they used the argument that the submission of Elizabeth's death and evidence from that swayed the jury unfairly. the Court of Appeals rejected these arguments. Their ruling was that the evidence was admitted fairly, but they did admit that there were issues with a search warrant. But they said that there were no ill effects as a result of it. Now, this verdict was not unanimous. And because of that, it allowed Michael Peterson and his team to appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court, which they did, and they accepted the case, right? Because they don't have to. They can accept it, they can decline to hear it, but they accepted it. In November of 2007, they affirmed the decision of the Court of Appeals. Now, about a year later, November of 2008, Michael Peterson hired new attorneys, and they filed a motion for a new trial based on their allegation that the prosecution withheld exculpatory evidence from them. But in 2009, this motion was denied. Then we get to late 2009, Gibbs, and this is where a new theory regarding Kathleen's death starts to come into the spotlight. And this is what people know of as the owl theory. And it's that an owl had attacked Kathleen outside. She tried to rush into the house. She fell and was knocked unconscious after hitting her head on the first stair. Now, this theory was raised by a Durham attorney named Larry Pollard. He was a neighbor of the Petersons. He wasn't involved in this case in any way, but he had followed it in the media like many other people, and he started to develop his theory when he noticed that the evidence list contained a feather on it.
Believe it or not, it is very simple to prove. And I have been trying for 14 years. I made an association with the birds that are in our neighborhood, the sounds that they make, and the evidence that was being produced in the Michael Peterson case, the reference to a feather that was found by the medical examiner who found clumps of hair in her hands when she was taken to the morgue.
So that's an interview that Larry Pollard did with a local television station. And he talked about a clump of hair found in Kathleen's hand. And Michael's attorneys had determined that the crime lab report listed a microscopic owl feather and a wooden sliver from a tree limb, all found entangled in a clump of hair that was found in Kathleen's left hand. And it was determined that the hair had been pulled out of her scalp from the root.
It's pretty strong. So maybe an owl came down or tried to attack her. Maybe she got near something and, those strong talons dug in and pulled the hair and pulled it out. And she grabbed to get the bird away from her and grab whatever hair it was trying to pull out, and that was left in her hand. I mean, I've seen bird attacks before. I mean, it can happen. Those big birds are strong, man.
There's a lot of things that are possible.
I mean, those birds, they can pull a lot of weight.
So I think in total, Gibbs, there were 3 owl feathers found in this clump of hair. So Larry Pollard goes to the police with this theory, but he's not sharing it publicly. However, one of the local Durham newspapers gets wind of it. They print an article that essentially is kind of ridiculing him, discrediting his theory, and other media outlets pick it up and they kind of do the same thing. But there have been a lot of people that have looked into this theory. There's a lot of people that support this theory. There's people say that the evidence in the case points to this theory as being true. If you look at the scalp wounds, it's said that by some that they could be consistent with wounds that would be left by talons. There's evidence that people believe means that Kathleen fell outside of the home, started bleeding before she ever entered the house, and they used this to explain some of the footprints in her own blood. And apparently, Gibbs, owl attacks are somewhat common in that area. There was a victim of an owl attack that came forward and said that what she experienced was a feeling similar to being hit in the head with a baseball bat when this owl attacked her. Now, prosecutors, as you can imagine, they dismiss this, right? They don't want it to be an owl. They believe it's Michael Peterson. The doctor who performed the autopsy has stated that he doesn't believe that an owl or any other bird could be responsible for the cuts on her scalp. But there have been experts, bird experts, veterinarian medicine experts that have come forward and said that the pictures that they've seen of the autopsy appear to be consistent with an attack or the type of injuries that somebody might sustain in the attack of a large owl. So the theory got out there. There was a lot of people that, like I said, were behind it. They thought it could be true. It was not used to file a motion for a new trial. In August of 2010, an investigation into the State Bureau of Investigation led to the suspension of an analyst by the name of Dwayne Deaver. Deaver was one of the main witnesses against Michael Peterson in his trial. In this investigation, it was discovered that when they found errors in a particular investigation, many of them led back to this agent by the name of Dwayne Deavers. So what happened in Peterson's case is there was an attorney not working on Peterson's case. He was actually working on the case of another individual that had been sent away, mainly on the work that was done by Deaver. And this attorney filed some affidavits to support a motion to have all the state medical examiner's documentation related to Kathleen's case turned over to him. This original motion was denied because this attorney wasn't representing Peterson. So David Rudolph, Peterson's original attorney, steps in, comes back to work on his behalf pro bono, and he files a new motion. Deaver was fired from the SBI in 2011 after it was discovered that he had falsely represented evidence in 34 different cases. On top of that, apparently Gibbs, he had trained a blood stain analysis team, and that group was disbanded.
For a government agency, this is like a nightmare because it's going to have a ripple effect all the way through because you just discounted your work.
Well, his work is going to affect every case that he was associated with.
Even if he was right, as a defense attorney coming into this, you're going to do everything you can to have, so you can't use that. We don't know if it was accurate or not. And that was what put my client away.
And this is exactly what happened in the Michael Peterson case. Because on December 16th, 2011, Peterson was released from the Durham County Jail on a $300,000 bail. He was placed on house arrest, had one of those tracking ankle devices like you have, Gibbs.
Like mine?
Just like yours.
Beep, beep, beep. You have the little green light, red light, go.
But he was released due to the fact that it was determined that Dwayne Deaver had given misleading, false testimony. He had exaggerated his expertise in Peterson's trial. The Attorney General even came out and said that any evidence gathered after Dwayne Deaver arrived at the scene may be deemed inadmissible in a new trial. So you talk about tainted. It's severely tainted at this point. In October of 2014, Peterson gets a new attorney. This is an attorney appointed by the court. There's a request for his second trial to be dismissed. That's denied. And a new trial was scheduled. But Michael Peterson was never going to go to this second trial. On February 24th, 2017, he entered an Alford plea to the voluntary manslaughter of his wife, Kathleen.
Do you understand, sir, that you do have the right to plead not guilty and have a jury trial? Yes, sir. And do you understand, Mr. Peterson, that at that trial, you would have had the right to face your accusers and to cross-examine witnesses against you? Yes, sir. You'd have also had the right, Mr. Peterson, to have a jury decide if there were any aggravating factors that might have applied to your case by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And do you understand, Mr. Peterson, that when you enter a plea of guilty, you give up all those rights and that there will not be a jury trial? Yes, sir. Mr. Peterson, you're pleading guilty pursuant to North Carolina versus Alford case of voluntary manslaughter. That's a Class D felony that carries a maximum penalty of up to 229 months. Do you understand, sir? Yes, sir. And do you now personally plead guilty pursuant to the Alford case? Yes, sir. Do you understand, Mr. Peterson, that you are not required to indicate that you are in fact guilty of offense? The law allows you to do that. Do you understand that when you enter a plea of Alford and you do not admit the fact of your guilt, the court will treat you as being guilty for purposes of sentencing you? Yes, sir. And do you consider it to be, Mr. Peterson, in your best interest to enter a plea of guilty pursuant to Alford, even though you do not admit the fact of your guilt? Yes, sir. It also appears, Mr. Peterson, that you pled guilty pursuant to Alford in part because you have worked out some type of plea bargain, plea arrangement with the state. The prosecutor in your case and your lawyer have informed the court that these are all the terms and conditions of your plea. This is what's supposed to happen to you, Mr. Peterson. I'll read it to you and ask you, is it correct? And it says, defendant pleads guilty pursuant to Alford. The defendant shall serve an active term of 64 months minimum to 86 months maximum. The defendant shall be given credit for any time already served in relation to this offense.
So Peterson enters an Alford plea and would later state that he was forced to, not by anybody, not by one person. He was forced to by the system.
By default.
By default.
Yeah.
Because according to him, the odds were stacked against him. You had law enforcement officers and crime scene analysts that were doing things that they shouldn't do. I mean, I think he looks at himself as a victim.
I have waited over 8 years, 2,988 days, as a matter of fact, and I counted, for an opportunity to have a retrial so that I can vindicate myself and prove my innocence in a fair trial this time.
Accepting this Alford plea has been the most difficult thing I've ever done. Ever. Am I going to put my life and my freedom in the hands of the Durham police, the district attorney? Look what they did the first time.
So that clip is made up of two different time periods. The first part was back in 2011 after he was released, and you hear him say, I want to go to a second trial. I want to clear my name. Fast forward 6 years later, and you hear him talking about the Alford plea, saying, man, I'm not leaving this up to the district attorney and, whoever else. We talked about it in the beginning, Gibbs. You and I debated, can we put this on Unsolved? Because technically, when you enter an Alford plea, you are not admitting your guilt, but the court views you as being guilty, right? You're just maintaining your innocence, but in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the court, you are a guilty person. I think anytime you get these Alford cases, and the West Memphis 3 is kind of like that.
Right.
Now, a little different than this situation. They did it because that was the quickest way for them to get out.
Right.
If they went through another trial, they would most likely have been found not guilty, but it would have taken a long time the way our system works.
And we had another case similar to this. I can't remember who it was, but it was the same setup, right? They chose to go ahead and go this route
because it was the least,
quickest.
Yeah,
and,
the quickest.
Yep.
I don't know that Peterson falls into that category. I don't know that he is going to be found not guilty. if he goes to a second trial. Right. I don't know that.
And I think he knew that. I think, he's a smart guy. He
is.
He weighed his options. He made his decision and said, this is the best route at this point for me to go, for me and my family. And that's the route he went, guilty or not. And that's just what it is. And will we ever know what really happened? Well, it depends on what side you look at. We know what he said happened. We know what the prosecutors say happened. You just got to figure out what you believe. And if you believe he did it, then you know your answer.
Yeah, and we know what the jury decided on. My only question is how much of their decision was based on evidence that was done by the SBI that may or may not have been correct. I don't know.
A large percentage. It was actually, I read an article that said that prior to Devers giving his testimony, the jury was close to being a hung jury. After Devers gave his testimony, it was 10-2, and at that point was just convincing the other two juries to roll with it. So clearly, up to that point, it was in his favor on the other side of a hung jury. And then this guy gives his testimony, and that's what it takes to push it over. So
no doubt it was a big deal.
It was a big deal. But I think because they see this study that they know that he's not guaranteed to walk. So at that point, I think he made a calculated move and entered this plea. So
I think when you look at it, Gibbs, you mentioned it, he made a calculated decision. Part of that is based on the fact that he had already served so much time and he got credit for that time. So he's a free man.
He's out.
Now, you look at that and say, okay, I could take the Alford and I could go home, or I could not take it, go to another trial and roll the dice.
Yeah, but at his age at that time.
Yeah. Wow. The downside is he is technically a convicted felon.
Yeah.
But
what was that?
He's free.
He's free. And at his age, what's it going to make a difference besides reputation?
To him. Yeah. Right. The problem is for the family, they can look at it a couple different ways. They can say he's still convicted of my sister or my mother's murder, but he maintains his innocence.
Yeah.
He's not doing any more time.
Right.
And technically, another jury didn't convict him.
Yeah.
So, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. And the family does come out afterwards. And, his Kathleen's sister, Candace, especially, said that the Alford plea is meaningless. She took it to mean he's guilty, right? She said, you will be treated as guilty for murdering my sister, Kathleen, and you will be a convicted felon forever. But I think when you think about Unsolved, I don't think we really know what happened to Kathleen Peterson.
No, I don't think anybody really knows what happens. There was either a fall or something hit her that caused the damage, but nobody knows. Even the prosecutors, they don't know what it was. They made their theory, which didn't pan out with a blow poke, but and then you throw the owl thing in. It's all wrapped up and around, but at the end of the day, either it was accidental or he did do something.
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah, and that's where we're at, and that's just how it's going to finish out.
So that's it. That is it for the case of Kathleen Peterson.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails. You want to do those?
Let's try them.
Hey, this is F checking in, and while I'm sure TCAT supports responsible drinking, my question is, what is the TCAT drinking game? There's got to be one out there. Unfortunately, someone let me in the Facebook group. I say that facetiously. But I haven't seen anything about the TCAT drinking game. Is it do a shot every time somebody says something interesting? Or would it be every time Gibby throws a accent out there? What would it be? I'll take my answer off the air. Keep your own time ticket, keep your own shots going. coming. Thanks.
So S is on the right track, Gibbs. There have been a number of TCAT drinking games in the group since it's been started. There was one about me saying interesting. There was one about every time I said, Gibbs, we need to talk about. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things.
There was originally a pretty long list.
There was. I don't know how you would find it now, but it was out there.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. I've been listening for over a year now, and great. You have a great podcast there. I listened to both TCAT Unsolved. I have a good suggestion for TCAT Unsolved. Suzanne Joven, Yale University student that was stabbed, murdered like 20 years ago. I think it was in 1998. I don't believe you covered that one. And again, great podcast. Love you guys. You do a great, excellent job. And keep your own time ticking.
All right. Thanks for the voicemail. And you're in luck because we actually did cover Suzanne Joven.
I remember researching that one.
Yep. Goes way back to, I think it's one of the first, it's in the first 10
of TCAT Unsolved.
Of Unsolved. Sure. So it was an early episode, but you will find it.
Hey, what's up, Mike and Gibby? My name's Travis. I'm calling from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm a transplant, actually, from Allentown, where you guys just did the case of Harvey Robinson. A huge fan. There's another case from Allentown, though, I'm not sure you guys have heard of. It's about the Freeman brothers. A horrible case. Two brothers and their cousin did an awful act of murdering their parents and little brother. It was all over the news. A huge case in that area, at least. Huge fan. Been listening to you guys for a while now. I drive over 1,500 miles a week for work and listen to you guys pretty much the entire time. I'd love to have you guys cover it and hope to hear from y'all. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking, guys.
All right. Good suggestion. Holy shnikes, Gibbs. He drives more than you do.
Shnikes.
Just
leave it at that.
Holy shnikes.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Tanner from Florence, Alabama, and I just wanted to say I have two extremely boring jobs, and I've been looking for a podcast to fill my time for a little bit, and I got to say, True Crime All the Time is by far my favorite podcast. I've been listening for about a week, and I've already gone through 13 episodes, and I just wanted to bring the case of Albert Fish to your attention. Fish was a serial killer in the early 1900s. His case is extremely messed up, and I think y'all would do a great job covering it. Keep up the good work, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
All right. I hope she listened to Unsolved, too, because I played her voicemail on Unsolved.
Yeah.
Yes. But Albert Fish, obviously that's a big huge, and it's definitely on the list.
Hello again. This is Cindy Calhoun calling from the Birmingham, Homewood area in Alabama, but I'm originally from Savannah, Georgia. And I'm really interested in the case that I saw a movie about. And I found out this was true. It's Not Our Son. It's about Paul Kenneth Keller, who was an arsonist, and he also murdered 2 or 3 people in a nursing home. And I'm interested in you covering him because they found out some evidence in the movie. I don't know how true it is about about how he was as a baby, and but anyway, he had an uncontrollable temper and all this. And I think his parents have a ministry. Anyway, I'd like to hear about that. That would be a very interesting thing, and I really appreciate all that you do. Just got through listening to the episode of the Browley brothers, and I really enjoyed like what you do. I'll probably be calling you again to suggest some things verbally. I know I've written you in emails, but anyway, thank you so much for all that you do, and you have a really good week. Bye.
All right, Gibbs. So that was Cindy. And Cindy does email a lot. She has a lot of case suggestions. She's got some good input on older cases.
I know you love those. Keep them coming.
I do. So we appreciate it. And we appreciate all of you for listening. And that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.